Good evening, everyone. I'm going to start in just a moment. I want to make sure everyone is in the room before we get started. And thanks to you all for your patience and making time for us this evening. Let's see. I think we still have a few more folks coming in. All right. Well, again, good evening, everyone, and thank you for being with us tonight. My name is Angela Scott, and on behalf of the Committee of Racial Justice, I want to warmly welcome you, especially those who are joining us for the first time. Before we begin, it's important to ground ourselves in why CRJ, Committee for Racial Justice, exists. So the Committee for Racial Justice did not just begin with a group of people sitting around a table deciding to form a committee. We began with an incident. On May 4th, 2011, an African-American student at Santa Monica High School was held against his will by two white teammates while chants of slave for sale were heard and a noose was hung nearby. This racial violence, that act in the school's district's slow and inadequate, dare I say, response became the catalyst for the formation of CRJ, which was founded by parents, students, educators, faith leaders, and community members who understood that what happened that day was not an isolated incident, but a reflection of deeper systemic harm. So since 2011, our work has continued to evolve. While education in the school system remains central to our mission, we are also deeply engaged in housing, policing, the courts, faith communities, food justice, and city governance because systemic racism does not exist in silos. It touches every aspect of life. Our mission statement is this: with the conviction that all human beings deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, we are committed to combating all forms of racial injustice, both overt and covert, both individualized or systemic, that still take place in our community. While racism affects many cultural groups, we are especially drawn to focus on the severe impact it has on the African American community. Tonight's workshop may be different from any other in that we are different in time and we need to step it up. With the conviction that all human beings deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, we are committed to combating all forms of racial injustice. So tonight, before we move into our program, we're going to have some updates and announcements. And with this, I'm going to hand off to Joanne Berlin.
Thank you, Angela. I there's not a lot of updates, but I just want to also welcome everybody here tonight, and I want to say that remind people that we have a newer schedule now. We don't meet for monthly workshops anymore because we have working committees that are meeting in between the workshops. So we usually met, for those of you who haven't been with us before, we usually met at Thelma Terry Building in the Virginia Avenue Park in Santa Monica. And we can't do that now because they're doing construction. So that's why we're only on Zoom. I think a lot of us prefer to be in person because we usually start with a potluck supper. But anyway, so tonight we're here on Zoom together, and I think that Angela's going to say more about what the workshop is, or am I doing that
Yeah,
now?
I will pick it up. Thank you, Joanne, for the handoff.
Okay,
So
thanks,
tonight's
Angela.
tonight's workshop is simply titled Accountability in Action. So we're going to focus on accountability, what has been done, what is underway, and what comes next. And this is in light of the Black apology and where we are. So our working committees are going to share brief updates addressing progress to date, if any, and what they are, immediate next steps, where community support and pressures are needed. So you'll hear from the following departments, the following committees. Education will be myself and Craig Ali. You'll also hear from housing with Tara Barascas. You'll hear about white nationalism with Joanne.
No, Janet.
Janet, I'm sorry. Thank you, Janet McKeithen. We'll also hear from reparations with Hajar St. Clair, and then community police relations with Dr. Michelle Wittig. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand off to Craig. As I mentioned, Craig and I will be talking about education, where we are, what we're hoping to do, and how we can gain community support. So Craig, let me get and I will also be sharing the screen so everyone can see what this commitment of accountability looks like. And additionally, we're going to make this available so that you can sign on if you choose to do so. We'll have places where you can sign on, including the Church on Ocean Park, as well as Just Family Cafe with Robbie. So we're going to have certain places that you can sign on in person. And if you're also if you also choose to do so, you can drop your name and your contact information in the chat and just simply indicate that you wish to sign on to our accountability compact that we've created. And so now I'm going to share from the education standpoint. And like I said, there's different pillars. Craig and I are going to speak specifically about education, and then you'll hear from the other pillars of it. Okay, Craig, I'm setting you up with the screen, and we can go from there.
Thank you, Angela. CRJ, which is the Committee for Racial Justice, was formed not out of outrage alone, but out of responsibility to ensure that racial harm in our schools would no longer be minimized, rationalized, or quietly moved past. 15 years later, we are still confronting the same truth. Education is never neutral. What we teach, what we omit, and what we delay teaching shape not only student outcomes, but culture, power, and policy far beyond the classroom.
Excuse me, can we see Craig? All I'm seeing is printed material.
And that's okay, I think, unless everyone wants to see Craig as well, but
Oh, okay.
I don't,
Hey, Craig.
Yeah.
Is there a question for me?
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, I'm sorry, Craig, go ahead.
That's a setting on your screen.
Got it.
Setting on your screen, Joanne. Go to view and you can change it there.
Oh, thank you, Louise. You know how I am about tech.
I know.
All good. Craig, I think you left off on Today We Are Living. Am I correct?
I'm on it. Today
Okay.
we are living with the national consequences of miseducation. One of the most visible examples is Stephen Miller, an alumnus of the SMM-USD system. His worldview did not emerge in a vacuum. It reflects what happens when education fails to confront racial history honestly, fails to teach shared humanity, and fails to cultivate accountability. This is not about one individual. It's about systems. When systems are taught excellence without empathy, achievement without accountability, and history without truth, we should not be surprised by the outcomes. Miseducation does not simply leave gaps in knowledge. It produces more profound disparities, hardened ideologies, and policies that harm entire communities. We also see the local consequences. 5 years ago, the school board was explicitly asked to engage in equity-centered dialogue using the sum of us. This framework clearly demonstrates how racial inequity harms everyone, not just those most directly impacted. That recommendation came from then Superintendent Ben Roddy, who understood that equity is not an add-on, it is foundational. Yet, after his departure, no action was taken. The conversations stalled. The opportunity passed, and the cost was borne, again, by Black and brown students. This year marks 10 years since Dr. Pedro Noguera's equity report laid bare what many families already knew. Santa Monica Malibu schools perform exceptionally well on average and yet consistently fail specific student groups in predictable ways. The report was unequivocal. Disparities persist not because of student deficits, but because of leadership, turnover, fragmented implementation, lack of coherence, and insufficient accountability.
10 years later, we must ask the question accountability requires us to ask. What changed? What did not? And why are we still explaining disparities that were already diagnosed a decade ago? Education is where harm was first exposed. Education must also be where repair begins. That means psychological safety is not optional. When Black and Brown students receive racially terrorizing messages, whether through text, symbols, or slurs, support cannot be delayed, decentralized, or left to individual school discretion. Trauma-informed response is not a courtesy. It is a duty of care. It also means equity cannot depend on who is the superintendent, who sits on the board, or who happens to be willing to speak up in a given year. Equity requires institutional memory, measurable goals, and public accountability. We must be honest. Progress has been episodic, not sustained. Intentions have been expressed, but systems have not been transformed. That is not a failure of values. It is a failure of follow through. In 2026, CRJ is clear. Commitment without accountability is no longer acceptable. As the Education Committee, we are recommitting to this work with urgency and discipline. In an upcoming workshop, we will revisit the Noguera Equity Report, not as an academic exercise, but as a moment of public accountability. We will examine what recommendations were implemented, which were abandoned, and which remain unfinished. We will ask what resources were allocated, what outcomes were measured, and where responsibility stalled. Because education shapes everything that follows: policing, housing, health, civic engagement, and whose lives are protected by policy. If we want a different future, we must teach differently, lead differently, and hold systems, not students, accountable. CRJ did not begin with a plan, but it will continue with a purpose. In 2026, this is a year of action. In 2026, this year of action is not symbolic action, not deferred action, but sustained, measurable, accountable change, starting where it matters most. Thank you. And with that, I will hand off to our next subject.
That's housing with Tara.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Wow, that was powerful, Angela and Craig. Thank you so much. And I think it's a great catalyst to talk about a year of action. There are so many challenges, and there's not been enough accountability on all the areas that we've all been focused on for the last many years. So I really appreciate that information and the messaging. So I will say that I agree with you that education actually is the foundation and permeates all of the subjects we're going to talk about tonight. And as I was putting my comments together for the Housing Committee, education plays a key role. So education, obviously, in the school system is critical because youth need to be educated, and not just with some kind of, agenda, that other people have created that is not based on truth or accuracy. But education of the community and education of what's actually really happening is critically important. And so I'll get started with the Housing Committee's work this year and what we hope to accomplish in this year. But I thought first I would read the mission statement that our committee created together many years ago when we first started really working on housing issues together. And our mission statement is we envision an inclusive, welcoming community where everyone is given the opportunity to be able to live and thrive in safe, high quality, and stable housing. So it's quite clear that that is our mission, that is our work, and so I don't know if the day will ever end or our work will ever end, to be honest, but that is what we are striving for. And so I think there are some action items and accountability that we can put together. So over the past year, we met twice a month, and some of the accomplishments of 2025 had to do with a few different areas. First of all, we want to see more affordable housing and housing that is accessible to all at all income levels and for people of all abilities in Santa Monica. And so a few of the areas we advocated around, one being the Santa Monica Airport. And our position on that is not that it should be an airport with only housing or an airport with only a park, but that there should be a park and housing. And we've been collaborating closely with a group of housing advocates called Cloverfield Commons, who have really put forth a bold idea for housing at the airport. And so we have been participating in meetings. We have gone to a lot of the airport surveys and workshops that the city has provided. And we believe that it is really important that there is some affordable housing at the airport. I don't think as a group we've landed on how much or where, but we are all firm on that. And so we are going to continue in this upcoming year to advocate because we do believe in that. We also spent a lot of time working with the Landmarks Commission. We've been working on a multi-year project, which is creating an expanded framework to review and preserve properties in Santa Monica. And that work is going to culminate this year. We have produced several years of work and a report having to do with meetings we had with various parts of the community. And so our final step in this process is to have an open workshop for the community. I think we're landing on March or April for that, where we're going to invite people to come in and talk about their perspectives on whether, what types of sites should be saved, what types of things should be considered, how they should be preserved. And then we are going to inform the city and Landmarks Commission in particular about creating a new framework for reviewing and preserving properties. So that work will be concluding this year. At our housing committee meetings, one of our key areas that we focused on this year was really educating ourselves. And so we invited a variety of guest speakers. We had Kevin McEwen, we had Natalie Verlinich, Lisa Parson, and Denise McGranahan, who all work with the city. So we were trying to talk to people about Measure GS, about the city's housing programs, about demographics, about how to register complaints when there is discrimination, which we do see happening out in the community, in particular for Black community members. As well as the right to return program. So a myriad of things we've been working on. And that's why we invited certain key people to talk about those things. And I'll talk to you more about what our agenda is going to look like in terms of action relating to those things. In addition, we also attended a variety of city council meetings because that's really where policies are created. And various of our committee members have attended to advocate for housing in a variety of ways, more specifically about policies. I know the more recent one was about the revised AHPP program. There's been advocacy for the airport as well as Landmarks Commission, and I think a variety of other things. So those are sort of the key action areas that we worked on last year. For the upcoming year, we're going to start our first meeting next week. So we're really going to try to zero in on one or two areas to try to move the needle because housing is such a broad topic and there really are so many different things happening that I think we were trying to educate and get our heads around a lot of different things. So I think this year we're going to really try to laser focus on a few specific areas. So I just want to briefly touch on some of the areas that we do plan to talk about. But again, we're going to meet as a group in January and then really try to define our laser focus areas. We did decide towards the end of last year that it is critical for us to be paying attention, and that is a way to hold the city and other policymakers accountable. If our committee members are showing up at public hearings such as Housing Commission meetings, at Measure GS Commission meetings, they will see us and they will know that people are watching and following the work. So that is a key strategy. We also want to advocate for things that the city is doing, such as the housing waitlist prioritization. So we will be attending those meetings and providing our feedback. I also think we want to hold the city a bit more accountable in terms of affordable housing production. There is a citywide housing element, but that is actually just a planning document. It's not actually a production strategy necessarily. And so I think we would like to see more specific production goals and how those are going to be accomplished, because that entails not only zoning, but that entails also funding. So that is something I think we'll probably take a look at this year, and just getting more pro-housing voices out there in the community. Last year, we all noticed times where there seemed to be either misinformation or negative discussion of housing development, in particular affordable housing development. And so we want to have more positive messaging out there. So sharing stories about how affordable housing impacts lives positively. So I think that's something we'll take a look at. And dispelling myths. There's been a few myths circulating, and we want to educate and dispel those myths. We're also going to perhaps be looking at a shopper type of a situation where members could pose as people trying to rent apartments to detect whether there are certain landlords or groups that are discriminating. So that's something I think we're very interested in. We are talking about more specific education opportunities. One of our ideas was an airport tour, so people could just get an understanding of the vastness of the airport property. There is also Robbie's Black History Tours, which I think hopefully will continue, although she's very busy with a new and exciting venture, which I know she's going to talk about. And also one of our members, Nina Fresco, has just published a book, and that book tour may be another opportunity to educate. So I know I've kind of covered a lot of things, but I just want to say a couple more things, and then we'll move on to the next topic. I do encourage everybody here who's interested in racial justice to attend our workshop about historic preservation and creating the framework. That'll be an important opportunity to hear from all of you. We also do want to continue our work on reform of the Right to Return program. If anyone's interested in that, please do let us know, as well as outreaching more to young people. This was something we talked about that we felt was very important because we need to catalyze more young people to get involved in our movement. So we have to figure out how to do that, but that's going to be something we want to work on. So in essence, I think my time's pretty much running out, but what I want to say is that we have a lot of different topics that we do want to focus on in the Housing Committee. So if you're interested in joining us, please do. To reiterate in terms of accountability, we want to be educated and follow what's happening so that people see that we're out there and we're following and watching. And we want others to be educated. So again, education is key. And then we want to create some actionable advocacy as a group. So again, anybody who wants to participate to craft these, for example, we could say we would like to advocate to the city to commit to producing either a report card of affordable housing production or a specific number of units that we want to see produced each year. So I don't know if we're taking questions. If anybody has questions, please let us know.
At the end.
Otherwise,
At the end, Tara, we'll take questions at the end.
at the end. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, and we hope to see you at a housing committee meeting in the future.
Hi. Yes. So I am facilitating right now the Working Against White Nationalism working group, and the reason I'm very passionate about it because most people don't understand how important it is in what's happening in the country and in our community and around the world, actually. But so I just want to give you an idea of how important it is, and then what we have been doing about it and what we want to do really fast. I'll do it quickly. Last month, for example, Franklin Graham was invited to the Pentagon worship service. It was completely Christian, and it was in Advent, when Christians are imagining a humble Jewish brown-skinned Jesus coming into the world. Franklin said, "We've all heard that God is a God of love, but God is also a God of hate and a God of war." Franklin is using dangerous theology, talking to the Pentagon, and he talks about the Amalekites, which is a genocide, about killing everyone, including the animals. Pete Hegeseth has nationalist Christian symbols tattooed on his body with the words, "God willed it," with a sword, which is the motto of Christian crusaders when they were slaughtering Muslims during the Crusades. This has a grip on the politics of our country. So what I want to get across is that it's important for what's happening, and it's also important when you're fighting racial injustice, is to talk about and to understand white nationalism. And there's actually at least three, there's more than three, but I want to just mention three interlocking ideologies. So there's white privilege, there's white nationalism, and there's white Christian nationalism, and they all overlap. White nationalism is not new in this country. It's from the founding of this country. It came with the European Christians when they landed on these shores. White Christian nationalism is linked with it and denies both of them deny structural racism and true history. It's the belief that these lands were intended to be a divinely ordained promised land for white Christians, for, of, and by white Christians. The reason to look at this is that this one group has seized political power. Many Republicans and white evangelicals have embraced this view. Christian nationalism and white nationalism are distinct but heavily overlapping ideologies in the United States. While Christian nationalism focuses on the fusion of faith and state, white nationalism centers on racial hierarchy. The term white Christian nationalism is often used by experts to describe their frequent combination in practice. Christian nationalism is a political ideology that tries to merge American identity with specific conservative version of Christian identity. People who believe that the United States was founded as a Christian nation and that its laws and institutions should be explicitly based on Protestant Christian ideals of the kind that they emphasize. It emphasizes an us versus them mentality. An adherence to a specific tribe rather than the country's pluralistic ideals, and often incorporates assumption about authoritarianism, patriarchy, and militarism. Experts note that Christian nationalism is often more a cultural and political identity than a specific theological or religious practice. That's why they don't really care about theology as much. It's more cultural. White nationalism is a form of nationalism that holds that white people are a distinct race and seeks to develop and maintain a white racial and cultural identity. It promotes white supremacy and argues that white people should dominate society. It relies on tropes to promote the superiority of the white race and perceives threats from any non-white, immigrant, or non-Christian. There is an underlying ideology of racism among many Christian nationalist groups that connects them to white nationalist ideals. Research indicates that there is a strong correlation between holding Christian nationalist beliefs and a greater tolerance for overt white supremacists. Adherents to the combined ideology believe that American mission is endangered by the growing presence of non-whites, non-Christians, and non-Americans. The movement often functions as a form of ethno-religious nationalism where whiteness and Christianity are conflated to be seen as the prototypical American identity. While it's possible to have a Black Christian nationalist or a secular white nationalist, the dominant and most potent political movement in the U.S. today is typically identified by experts and researchers as a fusion of the two, white Christian nationalism. So we had a program, our subcommittee had a program where author Christina Littlefield, associate professor of communication and religion at Pepperdine, explored the myth of a Christian America with the rise of Christian nationalism by looking at the ways in which ideas of chosen nation and kingdom of God have been employed to support the U.S. as a Christian nation and ultimately bred an aggressive white Christian nationalism that twists faith and unleashes unchristian behavior and threatens the nation. And I think we have seen that. We can't really fight racism without understanding what's underlying it, which is these ideals. If you have any interest in this and you're invited to join this subcommittee. The subcommittee will be offering to the city, if they would like to work with us, workshops on education and also on action. We're ready to work together to set a plan and measurable goals. Most people don't understand how pervasive white nationalism or white Christian nationalism is. Most people do not understand how important it is in the fight against racism. Many people who believe they understand it don't understand how we are so steeped in it and have difficulty recognizing how it's happening, and in many cases, how we are participating and sustaining it. And among the people who do understand a bit of it, people aren't sure what to do about it. But for the most part, people think that they have some understanding of it and that they are not responsible for it and are not participating in any of it, and it doesn't really make that much difference. But I disagree. We need education about what it is, why and how we are steeped in it, and what is being done about it, and how we can contribute. So if you want to join us, please do. And if the city would like to join with us and build a plan that is very measurable with goals, we're willing to do that. Thank you.
And now we'll hear from Hajar on reparations.
Hi, I'm Hajar, and I'm reporting on the reparations subcommittee of CRJ. The subcommittee basically has structured itself around the city's subcommittees and the Land Back and Reparations Task Force. So recently, the Reparations and Land Back Task Force were put on pause on August 24th of 2025. They were put on pause for an internal review of structure and to confirm alignment with the council's expectations. The pause is to make sure that the task force is reflecting council's interest and ensuring that the task force is positioned for success as it continues its work. On November 13th of 2025, the city manager, Oliver Chi, met with the task force members and all of the subcommittees. He met to reconnect after the 3-month pause and to clarify next steps and to ensure that the task force is in alignment with the city's broader reparations commitments. The city equity and inclusion manager says there's a planned presentation for this January 2026 where the city will share a new framework of the reparations program that they have in mind. This partially includes converting the current task force into an official committee or board with appointed individuals. So that's something that we didn't really want that, but that's the direction that now council is going, even though that wasn't the original direction. So that's where we are with reparations within our city right now. And we hope that our city leadership and all leadership on this call and community members will help us drive reparations to where it is actually going to be received by the people who need it most. That's all that I have to share.
Thank you, Hajar. And I think most of you know that the Committee for Racial Justice is part of a coalition that is called the Coalition for Police Reform. So the last presenter in this section of the workshop is Michelle Wittig for CPR.
Wait,
Great.
Janet, Joanne, before we go, I know Caroline Trosas, our mayor, might have had a comment regarding reparations. Caroline, can you wait until this last one, or do you want to go ahead and do make a
I can
comment
wait.
now?
I have comments on everything that has been
Oh,
just
okay. Yeah, so
discussed,
we're gonna do
but
Q&A. Yeah.
I feel very strongly about this reparations piece, so we'll love
Okay.
to just get some feedback at the end. Thanks. I can
Okay,
wait.
perfect. Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, go ahead, Michelle. Thank you.
Great,
And we'll-
thank you. Okay, my name is Michelle Wittig, and about 10 years ago, actually October 2015, we launched the Coalition for Police Reform at a CRJ workshop. And since then, our grassroots group has comprised about a dozen people who are active and another dozen or so who read our emails. The dozen who are active have perhaps changed over time, but there's a consistent number over that 10 years. The activists come from a variety of groups, including, of course, CRJ, but also the ACLU, the League of Women Voters, the Human Relations Council, and the Santa Monica Venice NAACP, among others. We have had a decade of advocacy, but I'm going to base my suggestions for accountability on the work that we've done most recently. I want to mention, first of all, that our group has been privileged to enjoy monthly Zoom meetings for this decade, since 2015, as well as in-person quarterly meetings with each city manager and police chief. And there have been quite a few in the last 10 years. And I want to take this opportunity to announce and congratulate the latest of these police chiefs, Derek Jacob, who ascended to the position recently and who will take the oath of office January 14th. It's unusual because for the first time in 50 years, a person who is currently employed by the Santa Monica Police Department is given the privilege of becoming chief. So he's an inside person. He has worked with the police department in various capacities for the last 20 years. Given that Derek Jacob is our new police chief, I think it's appropriate for us to publicize the suggestions that we have for improving local policing accountability. And these suggestions, I want to say, are based on input from many of the activists who are here in the room and two commissioners of the Public Safety Reform and Oversight Commission. So let me start right there and say that back in 2015, when Barack Obama was president, we had no way of knowing that today local policing is arguably one of the few guardrails that we have left for ensuring our democracy. And I say that not so much because local policing has improved so much, but because federal agencies have tested those guardrails and have really become an agency of unconstitutional behavior. So I don't think I would have thought 10 years ago that I would be saying that, but it is truly the case that our local police are a guardrail against the excesses of federal agents. We all know that. We see it every day in our headlines, and many people have experienced it. So I want to begin with that framework. So how can we improve local policing accountability? First of all, the Public Safety Reform and Oversight Commission was launched about 5 years ago at the beginning of 2021. And during that time, there have been at least 4 different chairs, and each one of the chairs before the present one quit the commission during their term. There were a variety of reasons for that, but the consequence is that there's not a lot of institutional memory, and arguably the commission's resources and mandate are quite limited compared to similar civilian oversight commissions in other cities. Just leave it at that. They're operating within a rather limited framework. So I want to temper my criticisms by acknowledging that they don't have the resources and they don't have the mandate that a lot of other cities do. For example, they don't have investigatory powers. And one of the recommendations of the National Association of Civilian Oversight Agencies recommends highly that civilian oversight agents in various cities have investigatory power. We don't have that. Back in 2015, then Vice President Kamala Harris launched the Racial and Identity Profiling Advisory Board. It's called RIPA, and its purpose is to enact AB 953, which mandated that local law enforcement must report to the state every stop and search that they make of any pedestrian or vehicle driver, a bicyclist as well. And then that data is compiled at the state level and sent back to each city in a form that is comparable to every other city. So it's possible now for cities to compare the racial disparities that they have in their city to other cities. Now, this is a big statistical problem with respect to how to interpret the data. But the gist of it is that it's an improvement over the past when it was not required that police officers report to the state whom they are stopping, why they are stopping them, and the outcome of the stop. So we have a mandate within our Public Safety Oversight Commission to hear the report of how large those racial disparities are each and every year since 2022. That happened in 2023. The data was reported to the commission, and there were large racial disparities. I'll just cite one. Black individuals were stopped at a rate 3.6 times that of whites, even given the proportion of such individuals in our residents, among our residents in the population. So 2022 was the first year of data that was required of our city. Then in 2023, the data were presented to the commission once again. This year, in 2025, the data were never presented, and it's now 2026. The 2024 data has never been presented. So one of the things that I feel the group should advocate is institutionalizing the presentation to the commission of the data each and every year so that the commission can come to grips with those racial disparities and take actions that can reduce the racial disparities without compromising safety. So that's recommendation number one for accountability. If we don't have a report of the data, we're not going to be able to wrestle with those results and attempt to reduce the racial disparities. Okay, the second suggestion, and I'm going to try to share my screen and see if it works. And you can see everything that's on my computer. Okay, here we go. Open system settings, entire screen, Chrome tab. Well, that didn't work. So let me just say what the second one is. Reduce the political influence of the Police Officers Association. The POA is the police union. I want to give a kudo here to the Democratic Club, because it's my understanding that candidates who want the Democratic Club endorsement for city council must state that they will refuse to accept funding from the POA as a condition of the group's endorsement. I think I saw that in the 2024 interviews, and the people who were endorsed did indeed say that. I think that's a good thing. And I do believe that while the Police Officers Association is free to endorse everyone that they want to, individual candidates should refrain from accepting funding because they need to have their independence. They should not be beholden to the Police Officers Association once they are in office. Okay, the third one is reform the Santa Monica Police Department's recruitment and hiring to eliminate candidates with prior problems that have been proven. Individuals who have been cited for civil rights violations should not be among our new recruits in the Santa Monica Police Department. We can do better than that. So I would ask the PSROC to audit the recruitment and hiring practices of the Santa Monica Police Department to ensure that we're not hiring individuals that have bad raps, basically. Okay, the fourth thing that our group has worked really hard on is to monitor the actions of the Public Safety Reform and Oversight Commission. Recently, I believe it was in December, the commission decided to activate 2 new ad hoc committees. The first one is on traffic enforcement, and the second one is on community engagement. So I would encourage anyone who's listening to my summary here to contact me. I'll put my email address in the chat and let me know if you are interested in becoming a member of one of these ad hoc committees. Their mandate allows for non-commission members to be members of their ad hoc committees. And I'll just do a shout out to PhD candidate Angela Scott here and let you know that she is on the commission and she has done a fabulous job with the Community Engagement Ad Hoc Committee before it went dormant after she handed it over to some other commissioners who didn't take it up. So it's been reactivated, it's resurrected, and Angela Scott will be leading it. So you might contact her directly if you want to be involved. Okay, the fifth suggestion, promote alternatives to incarceration. I think our city is doing a pretty good job with this. Some of you might know there's a program called LEAD, L-E-A-D, that is run by Anna Hara, the younger one. And she has done a great job with at-risk youth, making sure that they stay out of the law enforcement incarceration system. There's also a new program that you might have heard about. It's called SAMO Bridge. And our CPR people visited in person, talked with the person who runs it and her staff, and we're very, very impressed with the work that they're doing. They have already exceeded their goals with respect to getting homeless individuals who are handpicked by the police department into rehabilitation of various kinds. It's a 36-hour respite from the streets that allows these individuals then to make a commitment to various kinds of rehabilitation. Then, of course, there's Samo Shell, which has been mentioned by our city manager as being poorly placed in our downtown area and perhaps needs to be reformed with respect to its programming. We really support that because we want it to be much better than it is right now. The last thing on my list with respect to alternatives to incarceration is something that I heard a city council member might be proposing to a state senator, and that is reforming the conservatorship law so that it's a little more likely that homeless individuals who need to have a guardian, so to speak, can get that guardianship and be matched with a guardian, someone who can help them to rehabilitate if they have mental health problems or other reasons to be having a conservator. And I hope that this city council person will be successful, and certainly that would be a good thing because it's an alternative to incarceration and also an alternative to mental health challenges. Okay, the sixth one is the federal to local agent interface. This is really about how our police department responds when ICE is making detentions. We know that these have happened in our city. They continue to happen in adjacent cities. And when we launched CPR back in 2015, we could never have known that this would be one of the things that we would advocate for. But we definitely need our local law enforcement agency, the SMPD, to document and record federal operations, intervene when abusive and illegal behavior occurs, or when they see that ICE is acting in a way that lacks judicial authority, pursue state criminal charges against federal agents that act outside their authority. So that's a task that cities can take up. They can monitor what's happening with respect to ICE, they can record it, and then they can be advocates for prosecuting federal agents who are acting outside of their authority. I know this is a very controversial thing, and it might be struck down by the US Supreme Court, but in the meantime, the California state law does encourage local law enforcement agencies to be proactive in trying to document the extent to which ICE breaks the law. Okay, the seventh suggestion has to do with City Manager Oliver Chee's city realignment plan. There is a large component of the plan that has to do with public safety. And there are some really good best practices in there. We want to make sure that our members monitor the extent to which those practices are enacted. There are some troubling suggestions, though, as well, and I'll call one out. It's called the Vehicle Habitation Ordinance. The city manager has said that he's impressed with San Diego's ordinance that prohibits the homeless from living in their vehicles, even if they follow all of the rules for moving the vehicle and ensuring that they don't break any local laws. Obviously, living in your vehicle is a problem for people who perhaps live close to those vehicles. But I really hope that the city manager is very, very careful when he proposes to the city council that an ordinance be written on the pattern of San Diego's, because I think that there are some troubling aspects of it. The city manager also told us that he's working with the Metro Police to deal with the end of line exit at the end of the day when the metro closes down. We know that's a thorny issue. We don't know how it's going to be solved, but at least he said he's on it. So all of these things are suggestions for accountability that our folks, many of whom are in the room, will be monitoring in the coming year. And I invite you to join us. I'll put my email in the chat. We would be very, very happy to have more than a dozen people working with us in the coming year. Thanks so much for your time.
And thank you, Michelle, for that robust presentation. Q&A will be following the reading of the Commitment of Accountability to the Black American Community. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. I will also share my screen. Again, this commitment of accountability, we will make it available to physically sign off at the Church in Ocean Park, as well as at Robbie's Just Family Cafe. And then again, if you're also interested, you can email us or put your name in the chat with your contact information with your email, and we will be sure to add you as a signee onto this, if you will, compact that we're making. So without further ado, I'm going to kick off the reading of this commitment of accountability, and then my fellow steering committee members, leadership committee team will join in as well. So let me share my screen once more. Okay. Santa Monica Commitment of Accountability to the Black American community, Black community. For generations, Black American residents of Santa Monica have carried the burdens of harm inflicted through city-sanctioned displacement, discriminatory planning, unequal policing, and the deliberate dismantling of once thriving Black American neighborhoods. These injustices were not accidental. They were the result of policies designed, implemented, or permitted by local leadership. In 2022, the Santa Monica City Council issued a historic Black apology acknowledging these harms and committing to a path of restitution, healing, and structural repair. Yet, an apology without action is an empty gesture. Progress has been slow and limited, commitments have gone unmet, and the urgency for justice remains.
Today, let us reaffirm clearly and without hesitation our commitment to not only uphold, but actively advance the promises made in the 2022 Black Apology. We call upon city leadership, community partners, institutions, residents, businesses, and churches across Santa Monica to join in this work with courage, honesty, and sustained accountability. Our community accountability commitments. To ensure meaningful transformation, we recommit to the following actions and elevate them with strengthened expectations for transparency, participation, and measurable outcomes.
First, educate the public, not only by retelling the city's history of racial discrimination, but by integrating this truth into schools, public places, city training, and cultural institutions so that every resident and employee understands the legacy of harm and their role in shaping a just future.
Number two, actively dismantle systemically racist policies through targeted review of city codes, land use practices, policing structures, and budgetary patterns to uproot policies that continue to harm Black residents today.
Advance community-led reconciliation by uplifting Black American leadership, funding culturally grounded healing efforts with proven results, and ensuring the apology is followed by long-term restorative justice practices, not symbolic statements, plaques, or ceremonies.
The Santa Monica commitment of accountability to the Black American community. Support pathways for return and restoration, including affordable housing access, affordable home ownership, transformative small business support, apprenticeship, and career advancement. Direct support for displaced families, protection of remaining Black American households, and exploration of restorative housing and land use programs rooted in reparative justice.
Invest in civil and human rights protections, ensuring all public systems safeguard Black residents from discrimination, bias, displacement, and inequity with real enforcement, measurable progress, and public reporting. While the Black apology was unanimous vote by our city council, visible accountability has been limited to transform apology into justice. The following elements must now be added. Clear timelines and milestones for all commitments. Biannual public reports and progress, budgets and outcomes. A community oversight body with Black American community representation and decision-making authority chosen and approved by Black American community advocates and activists. Declared funding streams, not symbolic or unfunded commitments. Restorative actions including housing restitution, land use reform, and intergenerational support programs. Partnership with trusted Black American residents and organizations, not top-down city-led messaging. Transparent consequences for inaction, for example, the right to return housing policy failed and applicants are no longer given priority, nor are city resources sent to those who applied but did not qualify. Therefore, a new effective policy is needed to address this failure. Without these, accountability cannot and will not exist. Accountability is not optional. It is the necessary foundation for a just Santa Monica.
A call to shared responsibility. Santa Monica cannot heal without the active participation of its residents. Justice is a collective practice, and accountability is a shared obligation. We call on our community to show up, speak out, hold leadership accountable, advocate for policies that restore, repair, and uplift the Black American community that helped build this city, offer resources when and where applicable to fulfilling the Black apology.
your personal commitment. With conviction and clarity, I recommit the 2022 Black Apology and to championing the work still unfinished. We owe it to the generations harmed, the families displaced, and the young people who deserve a city that values equity, not just in words, but in practice. The 2022 Black Apology was a beginning, not an end. Our work now is to make its promises real.
Thank you, everyone, for reading this statement. And again, just to reiterate, this is our year of action and accountability. And so we look at this statement in addition to what each of our committees has declared as action items of this year, and that's how we'll move forward. And even in our quarterly workshops that we're having, they will be themed around these actions. And so I just wanted to say again that this particular statement will be available physically for you to sign on. In addition to, you can indicate digitally if you'd like to sign on by putting your information in the chat. Now, I will, since we're now opening up for Q&A, I will start with our mayor, Carolyn Torosis. If you'd like to go ahead, I know you said you had thoughts and or questions and comments regarding, we can just start there. Go ahead.
I just want to say real quick that you need to put your name and your email in the chat if you want to sign on to this accountability statement. That's it.
Looks
Go
like
ahead, Carol.
Patricia has her hand up too.
Now, I just have a quick point of information. I love the statements that were read today, and I would like to see if you could please include them in an email to us so that we have it in front of us in order to sign it. Thank you very much.
And you can watch it again on, it'll be on YouTube. It's being taped, so.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to actually ask Hajar a few questions, but I also wanted to say a couple of things. So I guess I'll just take it in priority order or in chronological order here. So at the beginning, Tara was talking a little bit about housing. And I can't state emphatically enough the voices that we hear at the council meeting. We hear predominantly anti-housing voices. And when we do hear pro-housing voices, they're generally speaking pro all housing, pro market rate housing, which is fine. But I think it's really important that we hear from all of you as leaders who have been doing this work now, as Michelle said, for over 10 years, and probably longer for most of you, that deed restricted affordable housing is important, it's needed, and that we're not getting it built fast enough. And so I would just give that feedback to this group. We want I'll just speak for Ellis and myself because we're both here, and I think we share this, our views on housing. We want everyone to be able to live here. We want to build housing for all types of Santa Monicans so that everyone can thrive. So I can't state enough how important and how much we would appreciate your voice on that. We talk in my day job. I think some of you know I work for one of our LA County supervisors, and we talk a lot about co-governance and an inside-outside approach. And I'm sure you guys talk about that here too. I don't want CRJ to be a group that we just hear from when you want to come make a comment at the council. Like, really, we have to do this work in coalition and together. And we see you as the partners in helping us advance our long-term agenda. This is a marathon, not a sprint. We have to work not just on one issue, but across a multitude of issues, as has been mentioned tonight. So just you having our back, I know it sounds not that important, but I think it is. I just say it is for me and Alice. It's important to hear from you. So I just want to re-emphasize that point. And then I would just say, in case it wasn't clear to everyone, and I just want to speak for myself, I think folks know that we did announce that we were giving an initial payment to the White family, but what wasn't really announced in the news or publicly was that we are setting aside $3.5 million for a restorative justice fund. The reason that you haven't heard about that yet is because we are still designing it. And we hope that the city team is going to present something to us in January. That's what has been originally told to me. I will also just say I specifically applied for the year that I was mayor to this called a Just City Mayoral Fellowship. It's run by Harvard, and I was accepted. And I specifically applied for the project of them helping us design our reparations fund for ongoing long-term sustainability. Because $3.5 million is not enough. We know that. We're taking money from the RAND deal because obviously, the RAND building is in the historic Belmar Triangle. We want to be able to get an ongoing source of revenue to continue to be able to pay out folks who were dispossessed of their both land and also tenancies. We know that not everyone owned their properties in the Belmar Triangle. Some were renting, but that's had long-term impacts on folks. Because we only have $3.5 million to start, we're prioritizing people who are 90 or older, because we want to try to get to the people first who are most directly impacted. And I know that might seem like, oh my God, 90, that's very old. I think the ultimate goal is to be able to expand the program. And I will just say, I don't know what has been said to the reparations task force. I don't know what Lisa told you all, but I can just say that the work is extremely important to me. We were on the council. I was on the council when it was created. I was the one who said that these folks absolutely have to be compensated for their work. It is unfortunate, I think, what we've seen now that there's this pause happening. And I would just be curious, Hajar, you mentioned we don't want this to be like a formalized commission. This is the first time that I heard from anyone that was the plan. So like you're telling us information that maybe I don't even know, because we're given information on a need to know basis. As you know, this is a very much not a full-time job. And so we're told things and maybe we're not always told everything. And I'm probably being too honest, but I would love to hear from this group, like what feedback you've gotten and what you would actually like to see, like in your best case scenario. Because I just mentioned co-governance at the beginning. Like it would be really helpful if we were working together in tandem and not just like reacting to whatever it is that the city manager is telling us. And I don't know if Ellis wanted to say anything. And Ellis, sorry if I said too much out of turn here, but yeah, just those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, let's go to Ellis and then let's go to Hajar in case Hajar has a comment to answer to your question.
No, I just want to echo what Carolyn said. This is supposed to be cooperative process with the community, and yeah, likewise, I think that there's a lot that's happening behind the scenes that obviously is going to get presented to us more formally in the staff report and public process as this moves forward. But yeah, a lot that I'm learning from this, and certainly, I know Carolyn and I would certainly appreciate to work with this group and others in the community to make sure that we get this right. So, nothing is set in stone until the council votes on it, and that hasn't happened yet. So, let's work together to make sure we get this right.
I don't have anything to add.
Wait, but I have a question because you had mentioned that you all were not in favor of having like a formal committee, which I just want to get clarification because I don't even know what's going to be presented to us, quite frankly, on this topic. And I literally have texted the city manager while we were sitting here being like, what's going on? What was told to you all, if you can share, in terms of what we think might happen?
That's what was told to us in that November meeting that we had with Oliver Chi, was that potentially it was going to become an official committee, an official board that was appointed just like all the other boards and commissions.
Okay, but I disagree with that because we gave the city manager authority to appoint people, and that was what was decided on by the council. So I don't see why we need to have a new process. But that's just my 2 cents. Sorry if that was probably something I shouldn't have said, but I don't know. I'm confused. Thank you.
Thank you.
Duly noted. And Craig, I see you have a hand. Did you have a question regarding this as well? The reparations
Well,
as well?
I wanted to respond.
Mhm.
You can hear me, right?
Yep.
Mhm.
I wanted to respond to what Mayor Terosas has said, and if indeed she's being assailed by various groups, I would love to sit in to some sort of, I guess you could say, session, because I have serious questions about how, the city intends to attack the homeless question and issue, how affordable housing is more or less, being looked at, and what their view is on this in addressing this. Um, I mean, affordability is a campaign issue here. And I would support anything that, policymakers are doing to more or less address this question of affordability in housing. Um, I've gone on record with the housing committee, in CRJ. And from what I understand, they're doing their darndest to more or less address, the many concerns that I have. And, if indeed there's another interest, I would, let me at them. I'll be more than forthright in trying to defend the actions, that the city does. Um, just let me know specifically, when these things are, because I'm thinking when I go to a meeting, housing is never really an issue, that I catch in on, so I got your back in essence.
I appreciate that. I think you know that there have been several anonymous mailers that have been sent around and like misinformation that has been going on. But certainly at the council, we will alert Tara and team when we think we would love some support. And of course, if you all have any ideas for any 16 items, we're also happy. Like in my professional job, we work with the community quite often to write up our motions that we present to the full Board of Supervisors. And I would love to be able to do a little bit more of that here in the city. So if you guys have ideas for like policy direction or changes, love to have like a smaller group meeting and talk about how we can bring that forward to the council.
Thank you, Mayor Shirosis. I see a hand raised, B. Barbara Padilla.
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name's B. Barbara Padilla, and I'm also on the city's land back and reparations task force. I am also unclear about the direction that we're going, and I'm also unhappy and unsatisfied with the communication. And I also wanted to ask a few questions about accountability, given that we just got introduced to 3 of your committees, education, housing, and white nationalism. And I was wondering, given that we also got a report on reparations, has there been any steps, Hajar, on accountability in terms of not accountability from the city, but accountability from those who are leading the land back and reparations, quote unquote, movements? Is there any reparations to address what was described as racism towards Latinos, towards brown members of the task force, and this conversation around mestizos? And I was just wondering if you, as a committee, have had conversations around what process you all have in terms of addressing when racism is being enacted or when racism is being felt by members of those communities in a public committee, and what is our options in terms of besides going to city council and being then scapegoated as the reason why the process itself was stalled. I'm wondering what you see as, and what you can let me know as a newer resident. My family has been in the Pico neighborhood for 3 generations. You guys know that I'm brown. I'm also mixed. I'm white. I understand I'm white presenting. I want to work with mixed and multiracial youth in terms of education, in terms of ending racism and addressing how we experience racism. And how we are uniquely pitted in between a binary in our society, a Black and white binary, but also conversation about Indigenous experiences. And yeah, I don't want to go off on tangent, but I just also would like to add, you guys have a labor committee, and is there anything, has there ever been a labor committee to talk about the experiences of workers in the city and economics? And that was my last question. So I just had 2 questions. One about how does accountability work for people in the community who are experiencing racism and who go about naming the racism, but don't necessarily feel that the city is being accountable, even though there's clear relationships between city officials and residents that kind of supersede the establishing of these kind of task force. I'm just wondering what outlets and what pathways does this committee give people like me to acknowledge these experiences and these issues.
So are you talking about, hi B, are you talking about the Committee for Racial Justice or the city?
Both, but particularly this committee, like what is the process for accountability, and what kind of resources does this committee provide community residents who are experiencing, whether that's because they're on a task force or just say there's an encounter in the neighborhood, or it's given like a living situation. What resources and what pathways are there to ensuring that there's accountability happening, not just from the residents asking the city to be accountable, but for this committee to be accountable to when issues in the community happen. I'm wondering what are the pathways, so that it doesn't just get seen as like an unfortunate series of events.
So the way somebody else could answer as well, but what I would start with is that we are not we have a certain focus, and so I don't know that there's actually a committee that deals with racism across the board, which I think there should be, and I'm willing to collaborate with that or help in whatever way. This is so we have a focus, and we don't have the answers to, or the answers to racism across the board, unfortunately. But I think we're very focused, but we also aren't narrow in the way of not standing up for other folks. So we would collaborate with anyone who is doing the work of standing up for racial justice and any racial injustice. So I think if there's some way that we could be a benefit, we would definitely do that. We don't have, for example, all kinds of different committees doing different things. We have a we hardly have any committees actually, is that we should have. We just have the 4 that we're talking about. We don't have what we ought to have. So we don't pretend to kind of run the whole gamut, but we are collaborative for sure.
And I don't know, B, if you heard in the beginning of our program how the Committee for Racial Justice was started. I don't know if you missed that part, but just in case you did, the Committee for Racial Justice was started in 2011 when a Black American student at Santa Monica High School a noose was put around him or by his locker, and the other children around him were saying slave for sale and some other racist things that affected the Black community specifically. And so that's why this committee was formed, because teachers, community members, clergy, community activists, parents, students got together and said, we need to hold the school district accountable for that. So that's why this committee was started. It wasn't just started in general for all racial justice, although we understand that occurs. This was specifically started because of that issue, because nobody else was doing anything about that issue.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to a lot I wish I could respond to. And B, thank you so much for sharing your perspectives on this really, really important issue. I mean, just speaking for myself here, and I know that our Mayor Carolyn and I are I think largely aligned on this, but our collective work on addressing past harms is not meant to focus on just one community. It involves a look at past harms broadly and the way in which equity has been or achieving equity for a broad range of harms to a broad range of communities. So it's difficult to set up any kind of task force or any kind of group that would include all perspectives that we need to hear from, but certainly it's something that we're cognizant of in the work that we're doing. And to the extent that you and others have perspectives that are ones that are important for us to hear, I know I'm here to listen to it. I know Carolyn's here to listen to it. We take that work very seriously. Just responding quickly to the ICE rate issues, the city's been doing a lot of work behind the scenes on this specifically. We've been connecting affected families to resources. We have a rapid response team. Carolyn dropped a link with more information in the chat. And it's not something that we always go out and publicize for a lot of different reasons, but there's a lot of work happening behind the scenes here. To give you just one personal example, in one recent ICE raid here in Santa Monica, there was somebody who was working at a car wash on Pico, very close to where Carolyn and I live. He worked at the car wash there. He was also a chef at a local restaurant. And Carolyn and I and others in the community were able to connect his family to resources to make sure that they got income during this process, and other resources as well. And I know that we've been able to connect other families to resources. So there is a lot of work that's happening behind the scenes, and we don't take these issues lightly. We know that it's impacting a lot of people in our community. And Carolyn, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to this, but it's had a profound impact, not just on the families of those who've been kidnapped, but on all people in our community.
Yeah, and for obvious reasons, we're not running the cash assistance program through the city because we don't want to be targeted by the Trump administration. But Haven Neighborhood Services, if you know them, they are a contractor for that. Please don't start spreading that information. But I put my name in the chat, or my email in the chat. If you have specific situations that you want to talk to us about getting resources for folks who have been impacted by the immigration raids, we're happy to do that.
And we also have a immigration task force out of the church in Usher Park. And we're, but I know you're talking about the intersection of different injustices. And that's very important. All these different things are very targeted. Like our immigration work, it is very broad in the immigration and ICE response, but it's not connected to Black racism. So there's like everything's still separate, and there is it's not, it'd be great if we could figure out a way to be better at crossing the boundaries of those things. But when you're focused, you get more done also. So it's like it's kind of a toss up.
So I just had a couple of things to say about
Yeah.
that. Being that we're a community organization of volunteers, right? I could go to any brown community organization and say the same thing, right? I could take up their accountability to their community and say, well, what about my community? I could, but I'm not going to do that because it's going to take away from the point that they're having their programming about. And I don't want to look like I'm being anti whatever that is. And my comment could be perceived as that, right? Because organizations have the ability to do what they're going to do based upon what their volunteers want to focus their attention on.
Have something brief to ask, but I'm sorry, we just can't solve everything.
I did. And I think what we see here are faces to go to the names of the failure in the educational process. I mean, we have a generation here. I was going to say this, as an addendum. CRJ has been in existence for 15 years. And we've struggled as far as we've struggled. The next 15 years will be a generation. What we see here is names or faces to the names of the systemic problems that we both focus on. I'll end on this note. Anyone who knows anything about Southern California and the Los Angeles area knows that it was founded by African American and Latino families. We could coexist then. It is our duty to fight for freedom.
It is our duty to everybody unmute. It is our duty to fight for freedom.
It is our duty to win.
It is our duty to win.
We must love and protect one another.
We must love and protect one another.
have nothing to lose but our
We have
change.
We have
Nothing
nothing
to
but our
lose.
change.
But our
but our
change.
change.
Ashe.
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 Thank you, everybody.
And
Thanks,
rest in
everyone.
peace, Asante
Again, please drop
Shakur.
your information in the chat if you are interested in signing on for this commitment to Black American community for action items. And again, thank you so much. We will continue with quarterly meetings, and hopefully we'll meet in person whenever the Thelma Terry room is available, and or we have another meeting space. Look out for an email regarding that. Also, again, we're going to make the commitment pack available at the church on Ocean Park, as well as at Just Family Cafe. So we'll have those available in the next couple of weeks, 2 weeks at least, I'll say that. We'll have it all ready for you. Thanks everyone for signing on tonight. It's